we're worried about cold butt. That's to bring the heated.
Oh, look at that reaction. Look at that. What do you say? What do you know? It's the Full Monty Sports Show. It is Monday, 9/12/2022. I am your host, Monty Perez, a.k.a. The Sports Whisperer. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Yesterday, we had Alex Scooby. Alex Scooby. Alex Scooby is going to be our guest next week, actor from King of Queens, talk about the Dolphins. But we had Gus Farrat on last week, former NFL quarterback, host of Huddle Up with Gus. We also had Mark Wilson, Nuts and Bolts Sports, very own Mark Wilson, talking about the Eagles and Philadelphia sports. Great show. Really appreciate. There's a lot of shows out there on Sunday. So everyone who takes the time out to watch our show, we really appreciate it. Make sure to give us a thumbs up on this particular show. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Nuts and Bolts YouTube channel. I said this a few weeks ago. We are getting very good numbers with this show, but for some reason, people who watch are not giving us a thumbs up, and we need to get more subscribers. So please tell a friend, tell a family member. The goal is to do this full time, and we can only do this with your help, and we definitely need more subscribers. So thank you for that. Thanks for tuning in. We have the best guests all across the country. This week is no exception. Our co-host, Amarie, is not going to be able to join us, but she will be back next week. I know a lot of people miss her. I know a lot of people really love having her on. But we're going to have Brad Ward join us in about 30 seconds. And then at the bottom of the hour, Daniel Goodwin III going to talk about the Bears and their impressive victory over the 49ers. Now, I should be in a very good mood. Again, great show yesterday. Numbers were great. I am going to be, after tonight, and I picked the Denver Broncos, 11-3, picking NFL games in week one. My goal is to be 80%. I have an open challenge to any broadcaster across the country, ESPN, Fox, CBS podcaster. If you want to go week to week with me and pick games, it's an open challenge. Again, I'm going to be 11-3 after tonight. I picked 2 out of 3. I was 2-1 against the spread. And every week I write an article for Nuts and Bolts Sports called PDF. Packers, Dolphins, Falcons preview. I went 3-0. So I should be so happy, but I'm not. There are so many flavors in the world, and I choose to be salty about the Atlanta Falcons' horrific loss, and I'm about done with Aaron Rodgers. I'm done with Aaron Rodgers. And we'll get to all that, but let's bring on our co-host, All Eyes on Cleveland, an absolute rock star when it comes to Cleveland sports. Brad Ward, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm excellent, actually, Monty. I'm feeling fantastic. Great. Get off the schneid there for the Browns. I was actually at the last opener win in 2004. They beat Kyle Buller at home.
Really?
I was there. And Cade York, rookie kicker, 60-yarder for the win. It was pretty incredible.
It's funny. I was telling my friend Andrea before I got on, I said, the one game that I did not even pay attention to, I did not look at the score, I did not check, because one, I don't have any fantasy football guys on either team, was the Carolina Browns game, and I know you break it down every week, so why don't we just get right into it? Let's talk about this game. People were saying it's the Baker Mayfield revenge. Can we just start with this, Brad? Baker Mayfield said, and I was so confused, he said people thought that this was the Super Bowl. Baker, what world do you live in that people thought week one in the NFL was a Super Bowl? Did Cleveland feel like that?
No,
Okay.
they did not.
Okay.
It was a big deal, though. Listen, and I get it. He made it like the Super Bowl. I mean, they made a T-shirt, him and his team made a T-shirt commemorating this game alone. The off-the-leash T-shirt, right? Come on. I mean, what's he talking about? He made it like the Super Bowl, and that's fine, and that's okay. And we got the Baker Mayfield that we've seen for 4 years. He was exactly who he was, right? He came out. The Browns played well on defense early. He was awful at the beginning. He threw a terrible interception. And then in the second half, he got a little hot. The Browns blew 2 coverages. Their defense was pretty good all day. Myles Garrett had a nice day against Ike Ekwonu, their rookie left tackle. He got to Baker a couple times, strip,
Brad, can I
fumble.
jump in for a second with this?
Yeah, go
Because
ahead.
I wanted to start with this, and I didn't. With TJ Watt now being injured, I really believe that Myles Garrett, other than Aaron Donald, is the most dominant, fearful, almost old school. I'm not going to say Ray Lewis type, but he is just nasty. In your mind, is he the best defensive player in the NFL?
I think Aaron Donald probably is
Right.
still. But I think he has a good shot with Watt going down to finally win Defensive Player of the Year. I
Yeah,
think that this would be
he's
the year to
amazing.
do it. Yeah. So I really do. And it may be his last year with Clowney opposite him. You know, you're never going to get like that guy opposite you that really kind of frees you up like that. He needs to take advantage of that this year and have a monster year. I could see him going, sack record, Brown sack record, or whatever, high numbers this year. He starts off with what, 3, I think, 2 or 3. A lot of pressures. Ike Ekwonu had a tough day against him. Baker came out. They did, I kind of said before the game, give Baker the underneath stuff. He's going to come out all amped up and let him try to force it into windows and make the mistakes that he makes. He made one early. The Browns controlled the game. I mean, they ran all over them for 217 yards, I want to say, combined or something like that between Chubb and Hunt. Time of possession, Monte, 38 minutes and 26 seconds to 21 minutes and 24 seconds, and they took like 25 more snaps than the Panthers did. However, in true Browns fashion, they let them right back in the game. And 2 blown coverages in the second half. So 2 plays accounted for 125 yards and a touchdown. So 65% of the Panthers passing all day happened on 2 plays and 2 blown coverages, which was not ideal. And they got right back in the game and looked like they had given it away completely when Baker took them down and got the go-ahead field goal. However, a couple fortunate calls that usually go against the Browns. I'm sure that the Panthers fans are not happy with the roughing the passer call and the spike call where they picked up the flag and allowed Cade York to kick a 60-yarder. But we will take it because I've been on the other side of those many times, Monte. So I will take the calls this time, and it's a huge win for this team because you kind of split up the Browns season in 11 games and then go where you go from there when Watson comes back, if he comes back on time, right? If he's being a good boy. So if they can get to 6 wins is kind of what I have in mind and have been talking about. If they can get to 6-5. These first 4 are kind of easy. Not easy, but winnable, right? And then after that, it gets really hard. So I wasn't terribly. I thought I would be like so down on the pass game, Monte. After, like, I have been pounding the table. This receiver room's not good enough. Brissett's going to struggle. And he did. He missed throws that he should have made. However, he played a gutsy game, and he got him down there in field goal range when he needed to. And to be honest, through 4 years of watching Baker Mayfield, he never did that. He never won games on the last drive of the game. So it was huge. It was huge for the organization. You can imagine the narrative today had they lost that game, right, to the guy they traded away and so-called screwed over, right? If he came back and beat them while your guy that you traded for is suspended. Not great. It would have been a bad day. So Cade York saves the day. Monte, am I still alive? Anyone there? Well, I hope everybody's doing good today. I don't know if I'm on the show or if I left the show or if Monte left the show, but I'm going to keep talking. So that was the Browns game. And it was... Can you hear me? Greg, can you hear me? Anybody in the chat? I am live. Fantastic. I wonder where Monte went, but that's okay. I'm sure Monte's going to want to talk about his Chargers when he comes back. And we've got all kinds of stuff to talk about. But I'll stay on the Baker Mayfield thing. As a Browns fan, Baker did this for many, many years, right? And everything just went like this with Baker for many years, right? So for 4 years of watching him come up short at the end of games, and even in 2018, his rookie year, when he broke the rookie passing record, it was like, okay, he looks good, right? And he looks like he's going to be the future. 19 was the opposite, right? Freddie Kitchens. Now then they bring in another OC, and he struggles even further. Now we've got 2020, and Stefanski comes into play. And what Stefanski did for Baker Mayfield is he brought in heavy personnel sets, lots of tight ends, an incredible run game, and he took away all the stuff that he took away all the stuff that Baker struggles with: progressions, complex progressions, pocket management. And he made that easy for Baker. And I know that a lot of Browns fans are like, what? They made it easy for Baker, but he really did. And he made the game less complex for him. He cut off half the field on a lot of his reads because Baker was a one-read quarterback, right? A lot of the knock on what we saw with Trey Lance yesterday, where he's staring down his receivers with his eyes, and Baker would do the same thing. And that's why he would get intercepted a lot. So Stefanski was a gift to Baker Mayfield. So in the end, when they have such a problem communicating in 2022 after they go to, or 2021 after they go to the playoffs, Baker's hurt. He won't throw the ball to wide receivers that are wide open downfield. When Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad posted the video of Odell running wide open all over the field, it was like, yeah, I know. I've seen the same thing with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and it was just something in Baker's head. I will say in the preseason and everything we saw from the Panthers and out of Carolina was like, hey, Baker looks healthy. He looks good. He's throwing the ball well. But he came out yesterday, and he missed wildly on the interception to Grant Delpit. They had like 27 yards up until the last drive of the first half through the air. So he really, really struggled. And the Browns knew what to do against him, right? You make him take what the defense gives you. You just don't give up the big play. Well, the problem is in the second half, John Johnson is supposed to have safety help over the top. He jumps an under route, and Baker gets a 70-yard touchdown to Robbie Anderson. There's your big play, right? You can't give up the big play to him. Make him be patient. It's kind of the knock that they had on Mahomes last year, although Mahomes is a totally another level of quarterback. But Mahomes last year, the whole thing was like, can he be patient enough to just take the underneath stuff and then, and win that way, right? And take the 10-yard drives and the 12-yard drives and take all the underneath stuff. We'll give you that stuff. We're just going to take away the chunk plays, right? That's kind of what you have to do with Mayfield and teams. That's the book on him. And the Browns obviously knew him. A lot of batted down balls. That's a huge thing, right? Like we've seen how many games as Browns fans I've seen Baker Mayfield, not a tall guy. No, Monte. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. I would post your Greg in the chat is posting best full Monte show ever. Full Monte sports show ever. No Monte. Fantastic. Greg, I feel really bad for you, man. I just don't even know what to say about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys last night. Total deja vu. I feel for you, brother. I don't even know. They look terrible. They can't run the ball. Tampa Bay controlled that game from start to finish, unfortunately. But back to Baker Mayfield. He wants to flush this and move on, right? And that's what he should do. He's trying to show some maturity, but I have no doubt that he said, F him to whoever NFL.com reporter. I think that he assumed he was off the record when he was like F him. Like, she was saying that stuff too, and then she even tried to play like the female reporter card, like, yeah, I get the Browns, right, as she did her apology tour in the days following her announcing the situation with Greg says it's a situation is normal. So I'll talk about that later, Greg. But Cooper Rush, I'm assuming it's going to be Cooper Rush for the Cowboys at quarterback. We'll talk about that. But either way, Greg commenting, Zeke did run okay. They abandoned the run. They did. How did the Cowboys go from so deep at receiver to so suddenly they don't have anybody there? Noah Brown is their second best option right now? Is that right? Like, how did that happen in one offseason? I know Cooper ended up with the Browns. Speaking of Amari Cooper, bad numbers day, if we're talking Browns, right? Bad numbers day, but smoked the secondary and got a PI call on a terrible throw from Brissett to the end zone. Set him up at the one for their first score. So Cooper actually, and got another PI call later, or a holding call that was huge at the end. So Amari Cooper actually played really, really well. Had a big catch in the final drive to get him into field goal range. Only 3 catches for 17 yards, but the statistics do not tell the full story there, as he was actually sensational. Blocking, got the huge PI call, got the holding call that kept the drive alive late. And then got him into field goal range. So he actually played a great game. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I've been so worried about this receiver room. Contested catch after contested catch in this game. So very, very happy that he showed out and lived up to his potential I've been talking about. Jeez, Monty, talk about putting me on the spot, brother. Holy cow.
Brad, cheers,
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
I don't know what happened. I'm talking to you, and all of a sudden, everything just went black.
Yeah,
and I'm sitting, I know I'm dressed in black, but I was like, oh, I've done, I don't know how many shows. That never happened before. So it's live. So, Brad, you take a break. Thanks for carrying the torch.
Hey.
I'm good. Go ahead.
Hey, at least it's like, come on. I have my own show. I should be able to talk for a couple minutes, right? So I just they're not all Browns fans. So I'm sure they didn't want to hear all of that stuff about Baker and the Browns. But hey, you got the total breakdown on that game. That's for sure. And we talked a little Cowboys because Greg was in the chat there. So
look, everyone's giving you compliments. You did great,
hey,
Brad. You did awesome. I think Greg said, "Great full Monty show, no Monty." So
he did. It was very funny. It was first ever full Monty sports show without Monty. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, you should have. I was dropping every F-bomb known to man. Unbelievable. All right, let's get to the Packers versus the Vikings. I had the Vikings winning their division. I had the Vikings winning their game, and I'm a little shocked that Aaron Rodgers played so bad because he's going on 3-hour podcasts every day. He's cosplaying as, Nicolas Cage in the movie Con Air. So I can see why, Aaron Rodgers, I'm shocked that he played so bad because this guy's so focused on winning games. Aaron Rodgers, you're Aaron effing Rodgers. It's not Halloween. You should not be dressing up as a fictional character. People should be dressing up as you on a daily basis. You're Aaron effing Rodgers. Okay? So this whole cosplay and I'm on a podcast 3 hours a day. I took hallucinogenics when I played in a game. I'm sleeping with all these supermodels. Aaron, no one's buying what you're selling anymore. Okay?
I don't think hold on. Let me correct you on something there. I don't think he took hallucinogenics during the game. He definitely did not do that. Let me correct you on that.
Okay.
This was an off-season thing. He went and took ayahuasca. It was not during the game. Let's be clear on that,
Well,
because
of
that
course
would
it
not have
wasn't,
been
because it was during the game. They
right.
test it, right. But
Right.
my
Okay.
point is, he's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Okay, but there are 5 quarterbacks right now who I would take over him. First, I would take Tom Brady. Think about this: Matthew Stafford was on the Detroit Lions for years. Matthew Stafford, 1 year, has the same amount of Super Bowls as this guy. Okay? Aaron Rodgers is 12-10 in the playoffs. And I don't want to hear this BS that you have young wide receivers and this on the sideline, you're pouting, you're bitching, you're complaining. Hey, Aaron, you know what Tom Brady did with Antonio Brown? You know what Tom Brady did with Julio Jones? He let them come over and stay in his house, and they worked out 2 to 3 times a day in the offseason. So they're on the same track. They have rhythm. You're, dressing up as other people. You're going on podcasts. You're hosting Jeopardy. So don't
Yeah.
bitch and complain that your wide receivers aren't there, because I know what Tom Brady does. I know that when Matthew Stafford went to LA, him and Cooper Cup had breakfast every day and worked out almost every morning. So I know for a fact, because Aaron Jones said this in the offseason. You know who's the leading receiver on the Packers yesterday? Fullback A.J. Dillon with 5 catches. So,
Yeah.
Aaron, you could be the $50 million man. You could dress up and do whatever you want to do, but stop bitching and complaining. I'll never forget the time when I hit 10,000 followers on Twitter. Now, that's a pretty big deal when you're trying to build your brand. And I tweeted at someone for a fantasy football advice, a smart broadcaster who was doing a fantasy football segment. And someone emailed me and said, "Why are you tweeting them fantasy football advice? You're the sports whisperer." And I said, "You're goddamn right I am. What am I doing?" Right? So, Aaron Rodgers, stop blaming other people. Stop dressing up as cosplay and fictional characters, and win some playoff games. I'm done
Yeah.
with this guy, Brad.
I can tell it's quite the rant. I don't blame you. Here's my fear, right? So I've listened to him talk mostly on McAfee's show, right?
Right.
And a couple others too. My fear is, and when he talks about, I'm gonna go back to the ayahuasca thing, right? But when he talks in such a manner that football is like, when he says he's in a good mental place, or he's in a good, I'm in the best place I've ever been mentally. It's all about everything but football, right? Like, so I think like his whole mental transformation, or whatever he's trying to portray, that he's enlightened and whatnot, it's that he doesn't care as much about the football, I think. That's
Brad,
how I read it. That's how I read
Brad,
it.
I say this all the time. We have a friend of mine who I used to coach. His name is Jared. He comes on the show all the time. And we used to work out playing basketball all the time. And I used to say, "Jared, you need to be so good that when you're bad, you're 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. When you're good, you're 25, 10, and 5. He was a stretch 4. And my thing is and this is why Aaron Rodgers struggles. This is why Peyton Manning struggles. They are egotistical maniacs, with most quarterbacks are, but they're control freaks. So if their one wide receiver is not open, and this is why Peyton Manning struggled for years in the playoffs, because they take away his number one option. Aaron Rodgers, when you get him out of his comfort zone, you could put Patrick Mahomes out of his comfort zone, and he's fine. You could take Justin Herbert. Last year, the Raiders took him out of his comfort zone. How many 3rd and 15 or 4th and 10s did Justin Herbert, a second-year quarterback, complete battling for the playoffs? You could take Joe Burrow and get him sacked 50 times in a season. He's out of his comfort zone. He still produces. When everything isn't perfect for Aaron Rodgers, he bitches and complains on the sideline and blames everyone else.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like I said, my concern for you is does he care anymore? Does he really care anymore? Because he's putting out the persona that he doesn't really care about football anymore, and that he's in a great place mentally. So the journey that he's on, it's kind of like, if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. Because I'm in such a great mental place, and I'm a freaking hippie now, right? So
Right.
like that's his thing. That's how I read it. But he doesn't have any wide receivers at the same time.
No, he doesn't.
He does no wide receivers, and he didn't have very good protection. And they're just I don't know what Gutenkunst is doing over there, but it's a struggle. I mean, they get to there somewhere, but I mean, it's problems. It's problems. I mean, he isn't off in la la land, and the team, they have a great defense, right? For
Well,
the
that's
most
another thing.
part.
The strength of their defense should be the back nine, and Justin Jefferson lit them up. You know,
Well,
I
terrible
mean,
game plan. I
yeah,
mean, you at least got to guard the guy, right? I mean,
yep.
he freaking was wide open all day long. I mean, he may be the best player in the NFL,
No, he
honestly.
might
He
be.
was
Yeah, I think
ridiculous.
he might be. All right, let's move on. I agree with you. Kyrie, and this has nothing to do. I don't want someone to come out and say, "Oh, you don't like them because they're vaccinated." I don't care if someone's vaccinated or not. I am. If you're not, I don't care. It's your life. But both Aaron Rodgers and Kyrie Irving have one title, and they think they're bigger than the sport. They're the smartest person in the room. They're better than everyone. And in some cases, they are. And in the game of life, they've won, but they're not so called winners at their sport. Again,
Sure.
Matthew Stafford, same amount of Super Bowl rings as Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Brad, let's go to the Steelers. Want to know, beat the Bengals 23-20. Talk about a crazy game.
Yeah, kind of a trap game here, right? Like Super Bowl hangover. Everybody's kind of down on the Steelers. Quarterback room's a little bit of like, you got Trubisky and Pickett, and everybody wants Pickett to play, but they're gonna play with Trubisky. The coach is saying Pickett's gonna be out all year. Good defense. Um, Bengals, I heard the joke today and it made me laugh. I think it'll make you laugh, but like, you know how they make the joke that like the appendix, they don't know what it does or something, but like clearly for Burrow, that's where he got all of his power from, right? So,
Mhm.
because he immediately came out and threw what, four interceptions?
Yeah, they
Five?
have 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions.
Four interceptions, one fumble. Still moved the ball up and down the field all day, just turned it over all the time. Some amazing catches in this game. A wild game, and then two really good kickers down the stretch can't kick chip shots to win the game.
Yeah,
Um,
Brad, did you want that game to end in a tie since you're
I
battling them for the
did.
division? You
I
did, right?
did. Yes, I was rooting for the tie, but I would rather see the Steelers win, certainly, than them. Now, the Steelers win at a monstrous cost with Watt being out probably for the season with a torn pectoral. I mean, he is such a huge part of what they do defensively, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we know that they will try to recover. I just think they won on a day that, I mean, they barely won on a day where Burrow turned it over 5 times and they still had to go to overtime to beat him. I mean,
Yeah, I mean
come
that's
on.
I mean that shows you I don't know how good Cincinnati is. I think they take a step back this year or how
Yeah.
bad Pittsburgh was because anytime you get 5 turnovers, that should be a blowout. All right, we're going to do these in about 5 or 6 minutes. Then we're going to get Daniel Goodwin on. All right, listen, I'm just going to say it right now, and I'll bring this up with Dan. I watched the Miami game and I watched the Chicago game. I was going back and forth, and there is a different sense to this Miami team. I don't know if it's a professional in the room, a sense of organization. I kind of compare it to what I know it's the first game, but the first weekend I saw the Mets play with Buck Showalter this year. I said they are professional. They have a plan. Whether they're up and down. There's no like there was no panic in the Dolphins yesterday. Tua played well. Waddle 4 receptions for 69 yards. Tyreek Hill 94 yards, 8 catches. They couldn't really run the ball, but this is a very good Patriot defense. And I think Miami wins 11 games. I was very impressed with the first year coach. This game was not competitive. You never felt that the Dolphins were going to lose this game.
No, and I guess I'll be a little bit cautious on the Dolphins, right? Like I think that they're good. They have tons of weapons. I am not a Tua believer. So let
Okay.
me just be clear. I don't think but I think he's good enough to win them 11 games in the right scenario. I love their coach. They used Tyreek Hill in a strange way. Like they didn't use him like the Chiefs did, the deep threat. They really just kind of used him as more of a possession receiver. And you kind of want to make sure that you can use Waddle and him, like max them out, right? And I fear that like doing that is kind of maybe covering up a lot of what Waddle does really well. So I just something to look forward in the for in the future. I know it's kind of deep, but offensively, I think that they look good. But were they really good, or is New England just awful? Is
Well,
kind of
New
my
England's
question, right?
offense,
Like,
I said this, there's not one person on that offense that is a top 50 player at the skill position. Mac Jones, Harris, their wide receivers. Hunter Henry's a nice tight end. But I will say this, their defense is very good. Their
it is.
offense is not. All right, Brad, I'm going to ask this question because I've been saying for years that Frank Reich is a good coach.
Yes.
But come on, man. You lose last year to Jacksonville to not get into the playoffs. And now you're 20-20 against a Houston team that really is going to be probably one of the worst teams in the league besides my Jets. Jonathan Taylor had 161 yards on 30 carries. Brad, is Frank Reich and are they is he not that good?
I don't think that's the case. I think he's a good coach. I honestly do. I don't know why Matt Ryan threw the ball out 50 times. That's ridiculous. And their kicker, Blankenship, who has been money, theme of the day, missed a field goal to win the game. But it shouldn't have been that close. Like, really, they dominated the game, and it was just one of those weird days. Overreaction week 1. I'm not overreacting on the Colts. I think that they have a good team and will be there. The Texans have improved, but I don't. I think when they meet next time, I think the Colts win handily. It was just a really strange game. Strange game.
Very strange. All right, let's move to my Jets. Look, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to say it again. Zach Wilson will never be an elite quarterback in the NFL. He can't stay healthy. And when he does, I know everyone loves Zach Wilson. I never liked him. But I will say this. Brad, you've talked about the head coach of the Jets before. And the same thing goes with Dallas. You cannot spend the entire offseason preparing for a team and the Jets score 3 points in the first 3 quarters. I don't care who you have as your quarterback. Joe Flacco is not a stiff. The guy is a reputable backup, okay? Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. You cannot spend the entire offseason and score 3 points when just for showing up, you should score 10 to 17 points based on the weaknesses you've watched all season. The Jets are going to suck. Zach Wilson will never be a franchise quarterback. And the Baltimore Ravens, they had another injury. Their defensive back is now out. But I think the Baltimore Ravens and I like the Steelers not as much as most people. I mean, I like them more than most people. But this game to me is all about the Jets and not about the Ravens. Lamar Jackson threw 3 touchdown passes, and the Jets suck. Basically, is what it is.
Agreed. There was actually some things that on the Ravens that kind of their offensive line a little shaky,
not good. Couldn't
not
run.
good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of stood out to me, and I'm looking for holes, obviously, in the AFC North team. So that may be one part of it, but this isn't an indictment on Zach Wilson. I know you feel that way about him, but this game has nothing to do with him. This has more to do with what they're doing in New York. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen this season, but I don't think Saul is.
I know what's going to happen. 5 wins. Max.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, Brad, I said this too in my preseason show. I said I have the Chiefs going back to the AFC Championship. I think they're just as good without Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes, man on a mission. Brad, is this team as good as they were last year?
I think they're better. So listen, and this was the question of the offseason for me, right? Because I studied this really closely and wrote a few articles on it. And I was, right around the draft, especially when this all was all happening, like when they reset the wide receiver market, right? And most teams chose to pay their guys. Some teams chose not to. The Eagles got A.J. Brown because Tennessee didn't want to pay him. Same thing here. They choose not to play potentially the best wide receiver. So the question is, can you supplement or can you replace his production with other guys. Well, good thing Andy Reid knows what he's doing because Juju Smith-Schuster and VS Valdez-Scantling, who I said was a perfect fit because of his
Yes.
speed, and they keep Hardman because of his speed. And all of a sudden now, 10 different guys touch the ball from Mahomes, and he's throwing the ball all over the field, carving them up. The Cardinals' defense looked like they were non-existent. This game was controlled by the Chiefs from beginning to end. I think they scored on their first 3 drives. There was no answer for the Cardinals. I don't know what the Cardinals are going to be this year. I wasn't impressed. And afterwards, when we was getting ready for this show, I kind of looked at their roster for the first time. Not like I thought they had a better roster than they have. So I'm not so sure on the Cardinals. As I know a lot of people are high on them. So we'll see. But I'm very impressed with the Chiefs. I mean, it's the same old stuff. Andy Reid is a genius, and they're a machine. That offense is a machine.
Yeah, that's a great point about the Cardinals roster. I also think they take a huge step back this year. Okay, we're going to go over 2 more games, then we're going to get Dan on. I'm going to just go with the Eagles. I have them as my sleeper team going into yesterday. Weird game. They were up 38-21. Again, A.J. Brown coming over from Tennessee, just played a monster game, had 10 catches, I think, for over 155. Dallas Goedert, 3 catches. How about Swift for the Lions? 15 rushes,
Yeah.
144 yards. The Eagles should have won this game a lot easier than they did. Again, they were up 38-21. 2 late scores made it a game. But I love the Eagles, especially now with Dak's injury, to win this division. I had them winning division before Dak got injured. But Brad, talk about one more game here. I think it's Tampa over Dallas. Did you talk about that when I was off the air?
I mentioned it for a moment. I'll hit on it for a second.
Sure.
One real quick thing on the Eagles, because I like the Eagles too, right? And this game was way too close. And I wanted, the Dan Campbell thing, right, with the Lions being on Hard Knocks and he's the darling, America's sweetheart after Hard Knocks,
And me and
right?
you can't stand them.
Right, and here's exactly why. This is exactly why it won't ever work for him. He's so high and so low that he cries 3 times an episode on Hard Knocks, right, to his team, that when they lose 38-35, how can your team withstand that kind of high and low every week? You can't. That's why guys that rah-rah guys like this can get short-term success but never sustain success.
Yeah, Brad, you just hit it out of the park. We've talked about this with Dan Campbell. When your team loses, again, if you want to cry in the locker room, you want to cry. You cannot be so emotional because you cannot coach that way. I want my I say this all the time. I want my president and my head coach never too high, never too low. That's it. I don't want to have a beer with Rex Ryan. Okay, give me Bill Belichick. I don't want to be like my president speaks like me. No, I want my president to be a genius. I want my head coach to be smarter than me. I want my fans are emotional. Head coach can't be. Now you could
Right.
be screaming and yelling, but you cannot be the roller coaster, and that's why ultimately they are going to fail. All right, let's bring. We ran into some technical problems. We are now fixed. Let's bring in Dan. Dan, you got to be loving life right now.
I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. We had a great game yesterday. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited, man. I've been pumped all day.
All right, so my friend Jared, who I mentioned before, is a die-hard 49er fan. And you're seeing this all over social media, and I think it's BS. They're saying, this was unfair because it rained, and we're a running team, and it killed us. Both teams played in the rain, Dan. Why are they making that excuse?
I mean, it's just the media spinning it. You know what I mean? And I've heard the narratives that are being pushed, and you got the same old ones. I knew it was going to happen yesterday. I mentioned it yesterday. They're going to say it was the weather. They're going to say it was the penalties. They're going to say it was this or it was that. And at the end of the day, the Bears didn't practice in rain in Soldier Field all week. And that's not how it works. So we went out there, and at the end of the day, they got the job done. One team did, one team didn't, and that's what it boiled down to. Take it and deal with it.
I mentioned this. People are complimenting your hat, Dan. Where'd you get that hat?
I got this. Man, this is a New Era hat. This is the what is it? I think it's a draft day hat, actually. Yeah.
Very
Yeah, it
nice. I
is.
like that. Yeah, that's styling.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Dan. So one of the things that I said to Brad earlier on in the show, I said I watched the Miami Dolphins and just the professionalism, just a different atmosphere. They're having fun on the sideline. I mean, you watch the Bears during the game, after the game, sliding all around, enjoying themselves.
Mhm.
Matt Eberflus has brought something to this team, a quiet cockiness, a belief. And I said this after the preseason game when Justin Fields against the Browns. Now, again, the Browns weren't playing all their starters. He was 14 of 16. He
Mhm.
had 3 touchdowns. To me, I wanted the Jets to take Trey Lance and Justin Fields. They didn't. But to me, Justin Fields, I know it's one game, but he looks so much different than last year.
Yeah, he looks much different. He's a confident quarterback, right? Something that I say about Justin Fields is that he has what it takes in the heart or in the chest, and he also has it upstairs between the ears. He wants to be good, and he doesn't get too high and he doesn't get too low, right? So he's a balanced kind of guy, and that's dating back to his days in high school and college. He's carried himself that way, and it's evident by the way he plays and how he's even keel through 4 quarters. You go through adversity in the game, you're up, you're down, those things happen, and he accepts that. He knows that it's coming, and he's able to adjust his game accordingly and then rally the guys and kind of try to get those guys behind him. That's a sign of leadership, and he's got that intangible that a lot of people lack in the NFL, like quarterback wise.
Brad, we talk about, and you could ask him whatever you want. I just want to ask you this question: you weren't as high as Trey Lance as I was. Now Trey Lance didn't play well. It was obviously a monsoon. You can't go off it. But if San Francisco loses next week, are people going to be calling for Jimmy G?
I think they probably already are. And to your point in on a private chat that we had, the locker room probably is already conflicted, right? Like they've won with Jimmy G before, and Trey did not play well. I told you I don't think he's ready. And they've put themselves in a tough position here, but they are 2 through 53 a Super Bowl caliber roster. So you have to kind of have that backup plan with Jimmy G there. So Trey Lance is really struggling with his eyes, man. I mean, he is staring down receivers in that game. I was going to ask you, Dan, as far as Justin Fields has been incredible. Really impressed with his poise. Obviously, I watched him every week play at Ohio State, so I'm a big fan and I'm rooting for him. What a great throw across his body yesterday for that
Mhm.
huge play. It was incredible. With the weapons there, are you worried about the wide receiver, like Darnell Mooney, who I thought was going to be their weapon? I don't think, did he not have a catch yesterday?
Yeah, I think they went to him a couple times, and didn't pan out really well. But they were able to spread the ball around the other wide receivers. I think Darnell Mooney will be fine. His relationship with Justin Fields and their rapport is really intact. They're really, they're joined at the hip. That's his brother. They work out together. They do everything together. So I'm not worried about that. You just have a situation where it's a monsoon that we played in, right?
Yeah.
And you're limited in what you can really do. And
Sure.
and in the first half, I'll be honest with you, in the first half, Chicago's passing game was not they didn't take as many chances downfield. That's because of the starting field position. In the first half, I think they averaged around starting at their own 14-yard line. And San Francisco was starting at their 40. So it opens up the game as to what you can do in the passing game. So I think that played a factor into it. And then in the second half, when things like that changed, they were able to throw the ball around a little bit. That pass going across his body to Dante Pettis was
Yeah.
insane. I mean, to be able to get out of that sack, the guy came untouched. He got out of that, rolled out to the other side. And I always say this about Justin Fields: when he scrambles, it's different because while he does have 4.4 and possibly 4.3 speeds at times, he doesn't just necessarily look to take off and shoot down the field. He looks up and he's looking for wide receivers down the field, and you saw that on display. And because he has wheels, he's mobile like that. It gets guys out of position, and they left that guy all alone because they didn't think he would go back that way. And sure enough, he was wide open. He was able to toss it over to him.
One of the things that I saw yesterday, and I drafted this kid as my last pick in almost every fantasy football, is Khalil Herbert, the rookie out of Virginia Tech. I really like him as a running back. Again, you're playing in a monsoon, but I didn't see the Bears, who San Francisco has a reputation when they play you on the road or home, you're physically taking a pounding. I didn't see this offensive line get manhandled like I thought they would. Now, Pro
Mhm.
Football Focus has the Bears ranked 31st in offensive line, but they rushed for 99 yards in a monsoon. So, I mean, is this offensive line better than we thought?
Well, I mean, they don't have the sexy names, right? And that goes across the board. Even with the wide receiver group, the Bears don't have the sexy names, and that's what everybody was looking for in the offseason. So when you roll out Tevin Jenkins and you roll out, a fifth round rookie left tackle in Braxton Jones, and you got Lucas Patrick that we got from Green Bay, and Larry Borum, who's a fifth round second year player. These are not the sexy names. These are not the household names that everybody saw. So, it was easy to kind of, bang on them a little bit and talk down on them. And I understand why people were doing that. But I will say this: the team really ran the ball well. They gave up 2 sacks, right? But you're going up against Nick Bosa. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
you're going to lose a couple of them. But what I will say is there was a stat that I saw, and it said on pass blocking plays, they won their offensive line won 88% of those yesterday in
Wow.
yesterday's game.
Wow.
On average, the league average is 60%.
That's
So
insane.
they're
Wow.
doing something well there. They're doing something well there. And yeah, it was a monsoon, so it's a small sample size. But when you have that type of production and you can see that happening, you see the fruits of the labor that's being built there. So, you
Uh,
know,
Go ahead,
those
Brad.
guys are building into it.
I was just gonna say, another thing about the Bears, obviously, and you know this, Monty. I've been a big Matt Eberflus fan for a while now. A ton of respect for him. So, he had him prepared and organized, and in those kind of games, and like a lot of people are gonna have, as you mentioned already, Dan, have the narrative of, oh, like this is a throwaway game, but hell no, man. It's all about composure and making plays in those moments. And Eberflus did a good job, and he had him prepared, and he beat a really good coach and a really good team. If the weather plays to your favor, take advantage of it. Any
Exactly.
advantage you can get in the
Exactly.
freaking
Yeah.
muck it up, right? We talk
Look,
about it all the time. If you're playing a better team than you, and it's gonna be a bad, crappy weather day, muck it up. Make the game ugly. Get it as ugly and as you possibly can, if that gives you the best chance to win. So, kudos to the Bears. Kudos to Matt Eberflus. Happy for him and Justin Fields. Good stuff.
Yeah.
two points with that, Dan. One, are you as high on Herbert as I am? Because I think he'd be a starting back. And give us a few points on what the difference is. Because believe it or not, Matt Nagy was trending on social media today because they're like, what a difference. What has this guy brought? Because I got to be honest with you, their defense was, even if it was raining, they were flying. Trey Lance got hit, and he got hit hard a lot yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. I'll touch on Herbert first. I think Herbert is a really good back. He has good vision, good balance. He has speed, and he hits the holes quickly. There's no hesitation there, right? He goes and if it's a crease there, he's going to go take it. You give him five inches, he's going to take 3 feet of it if he can. So he's a really good back. I think he has the potential to be a starting back. Right now, David Montgomery is that guy. And David Montgomery, whenever you see a backup come in, it's the age-old adage, right?
Yeah.
Everybody says, we're clamoring for that backup who brings this punch all of a sudden, and it's like, wow, what a change of pace that is. And while Khalil Herbert is good, I think David Montgomery will hold his spot. This is the last year of his contract. He'll either get another deal or we'll see what happens in the offseason with that. But as of right now, David Montgomery probably will hold that spot down.
Listen,
But Khalil Herbert is a wonderful, wonderful piece to have. And I would tell anybody that has David Montgomery in fantasy, get Khalil Herbert just in case.
listen, the
Definitely.
Packers do this with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. People don't
Yeah.
realize this. Last year, AJ Dillon had more rushing yards than Aaron Jones last year.
Yeah.
And that game was just a joke yesterday because It was almost like Aaron Jones, I think, got 8 total touches. Dan, real quick before you get back to the coach, people want to see the chain. Dan, show us the
Oh,
bling.
that's nothing. It's just a necklace. That's all. That's just a necklace.
Dan, you get complimented on your attire more than anybody else who's been a guest on this show. All right,
I mean, Brad's got a chain on. Check his out.
Ray, what do you got? Is it expensive bling?
I see
No,
something there. Yeah, he's a little
yeah,
something.
just a little something, something.
All right, so talk about Matt Eberflus again. Small sample size, but I love what Miami did. I love what Chicago did. Just and I never saw under Nagy the Bears having fun. They looked like they were having so much fun yesterday. And there's a difference between, someone like a Pete Carroll who jokes around and rah-rah and someone like a Bill Belichick. I think they're both too extreme. But they look like they were having fun yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. Matt Eberflus, he's brought the terminology or the hits factors, the hits production into the situation, right? And that is, hustle. You want to hustle. You want to, all these things, intensity. All these things that he uses the hits factor for, and they've bought into that. Some of the players have bought into that, and you can see it happening. You can see it taking shape, and that's hustle, intensity. All those things playing like, rallying to the ball on defensive side. And it's a short process to turn that around, to change that kind of culture or that attitude and that mindset. In the locker room post game, he talked about being mentally and physically there. You know what I mean? Having stamina, mental and physical stamina. And that means playing for the entire 4 quarters. The Bears were down. You're down
Yeah.
10-0 at one point, and they had allowed this team to get into the red zones 4 times in the first half, and they were down 10-0, and things weren't looking great. But you have a quarterback that's even kill, you have a coach that's even kill, and there's no chaos on the sidelines. That's what I saw that was different. And I've told everybody, from my interactions with people and with Bears fans and things like that, don't focus so much on what's our record going to be. Are we going to make the playoffs? Don't focus so much on that. This is a rebuild. It's a situation where we're restarting this whole thing, right? And so you have to really take a look at what you saw last year and compare it to what you're going to see this year. And that'll tell you if guys are buying in and if they're actually, believing what this coach and what the GM is preaching. And clearly they are. You saw it was evident yesterday. Those guys stayed even keel. They had fun at the end of the game with the sliding into the end zone. Wonderful pictures. Good stuff for the fans to see. You know what I mean? It just brought some enthusiasm, some energy, and life to this organization, and that's what they've been begging for.
And one of the things that was really telling, everyone talks about, Brad brought it up. I was going to bring it up if Brad didn't, about the talent around Justin Fields. So what does Justin Fields do as the leader of the team in the locker room afterwards? He gives the first game ball to the general manager and the second game ball to the head coach. Like, we're all in this together. And maybe, you said, I don't care who you are, 95% of NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL players, they read the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Bears were reading the headlines that they don't have this much talent, and they're
absolutely.
like, it's us against the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've seen that. You've seen, the narrative that's being pushed, that they were, a 3-win team,
Right.
Possibly the worst team in the league. Right. Justin Fields should hold out and demand a trade, a second-year player. I mean, like, these types of things were just crazy thoughts that were popping into people's head, and I could name off guys that I've contacted, and engaged in conversation with on that subject. But it's been media pundits, media so-called analysts, and things like that. And what I'll say is that they're not doing their research on the team. This team is different from top to bottom, right? When you look at the wide receivers that we have, we don't have Allen Robinson, and he was good. He produced 2 100-catch seasons in Chicago. That's production, right? We understand that. But at the end of the day, from top to bottom, the wide receiver room is filled with guys who have upside, who are young, who are fast, and given an opportunity, they can make a name for themselves. Nobody knows who any of these guys are until they have that opportunity to make a name for themselves. They have it now because you're in a rebuilding process along the offensive line, the wide receiver room. I mean, they addressed everything, and that's one thing that I give Eberflus and I give the GM Ryan Poles credit for in the offseason. There were 3 areas of concern on this team, major areas of concern. One was the secondary. You had the same things happening in the first game that happened in the last game last year. And I tell people that all the time. In both of those games, you had a guy catch a ball, fall down, no defensive back touched him. He got up and ran into the end zone. Game 1, game 17, same thing happened, right? So secondary was an area of concern. Of course, the offensive line and, of course, the wide receiver room. They changed the whole wide receiver room. Mooney is the only returning wide receiver, but you have a lot of fast guys, young guys that have some upside, that are hungry and have the opportunity to maybe produce something. Then you address the offensive line because you signed Lucas Patrick. You get another rookie in Braxton Jones. You put the other rookies, you get them to buy in. Tevin Jenkins, everybody was on his case, but he's bought in now. He talked about it yesterday. So you see the change in that, right? And then, of course, the secondary by drafting 2 rookies, a cornerback, and Jaquan Brisker. He was all over the field yesterday, as well as Robinson. I'll give you just a real quick nugget, right, about Robinson, our defensive end. He's actually second string. He had 1.5 sacks yesterday, 2 tackles for loss, and 7 tackles. Wow. That was the first game he's ever played at defensive end on any level.
Wow.
First game he's ever played at any level of defensive end. He was actually a quarterback and a wide receiver in college.
That's insane. By the way, thank you, Dan, for saying end of the day. That's a shot for someone here. So I really appreciate that. All right, Dan. So my friend Bill just texted me and he said, I remember when Dan used to come on, he goes, what a difference success makes, because he was always defending the team, and he's like, now he's all cocky. I love it.
Well, I've earned that right today, right? We've earned that right. And if you follow me on Twitter, I'll put some funny ones out there today, of the attitude and the bravado that we have right now as Bears fans. Looking forward
Brad,
to it.
One of the things I brought up, and you could talk about this with your talented defense, the Buffalo Bills last year, they didn't have one defensive line player play more than 76% of their snaps. And the philosophy there is they are, instead of you getting worn out in the fourth quarter, you're fresh in the fourth quarter. Now, are we going to see this throughout the NFL now? Dan just talked about his defensive end, who was his first time playing there. Are we going to see defensive lines just rotating in and out so you wear the opponent out in the fourth quarter instead of the other way around? Like, do you want to see Garrett on the sideline during the game so in the fourth quarter he's fresh?
They actually did it a couple of times yesterday. They have worked in their rookie Alex Wright at the edge, but the Browns are already doing that, right? Or they're trying to. So I think it's something that'll be adopted across the league. At least people that are showing that, if you can keep your defense fresh, where you put a team in trouble there is when you're in a position to drive the ball, the 4-minute drive, right? That turns into 6 minutes and 7 minutes in the fourth quarter, and you can't have your best players on the sidelines. And now they've been on the field forever, and it is the fourth quarter, and regardless of how many breathers they got, they're gassed, right? That's where you can really put a team on the ropes. But yeah, it does help to give guys breather. Like they gave Garrett a series off here and there. And certainly more so even on the interior, right? Like a good interior rotation is huge.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think that teams should adopt that if they have the talent to do it. Now you're always going to have your studs on the field when it matters. So it's interesting. I was going to make one more comment on the Bears there as far as Eberflus and the like. What a huge culture win, right? Like so, like you bring in a coach and he's preaching this culture all off season, and usually in most circumstances it takes a while to see that stuff play out, right? But you got a day where it got ugly and you were prepared and you made some plays and they didn't. And just that win to back up all of the talk and everything that Eberflus has been saying for an entire offseason is so huge for a young team. So a huge culture win in Chicago for sure.
Great point, Brad.
Very big.
Also, Dan, what do you think is going to happen with Smith?
Well, I think Roquan is a monster in zone right on the football field, right? I think he's everything that you would want in a linebacker. He's fast, he's quick, he's smart, he's physical. He wants to get to the ball. He smacks people around. Those are the things that you want for your linebacker. I think he's a top three in this league, and I've said it all along that if you stack his numbers against those of like Shaquille Leonard or Darius Leonard, right? For those who don't know that Shaquille is Darius and Darius is Shaquille. But you know, if you stack his numbers against him, they're comparable. They're not better than his. But then you turn around and you stack them against Fred Warner, who also got a contract last year, and his are better than Fred Warner's. And I'm talking about everything: tackles, tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions. All of those things are better than Fred Warner's. So he deserves to get paid. I think he will get paid.
I think
It's just a matter of when. It's just a matter of when.
He's representing himself, right?
Yeah, that's the only problem.
So is Lamar Jackson.
That's it.
It's
But
such
see,
an
but
issue.
Roquan is doing it differently, and Jackson is doing it, but Roquan is doing it in a way that's brought some some bad light to the situation.
Listen, I said this about Lamar. Like, it is tough. It brings in a whole nother layer of hurt feelings when you don't have a buffer there to take the. Like, when you sit down with somebody and they say, "This is why we don't want to pay you,"
Yeah.
then the agent takes that and makes it sound a little different and makes it sound a little sweeter to the player. When you're sitting across the table from player to player and you're saying, "This is why I don't think you're worth this much money," there's no buffer there. It can cause some hurt feelings, and it makes it a lot harder to come to that meeting ground, I think. We're seeing that in Baltimore and with Roquan.
I had
Go ahead.
Gus Farad on yesterday, and former NFL player for 15 years, and he talked about that. And he said there's two sides of the story. He said, yes, the agent will go in and negotiate, and the owner or general manager will say, we don't like this, 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 and he'll soften the blow. He said, but if you have a quarterback who is confident and who wants to get better, he doesn't mind being coached, even if it's by the GM or the owner. So there's two sides. I agree with you, Brad. You do need a buffer, but also, and let me just say this before we go on to the next subject. My people in the chat are so complimentary. I mean, other than this guy trying to sell some sort of screen variety here, but I mean, look at well-spoken Brad, Dan, you're the man, the energy. Like, other than this guy, Harry Cloud, who the only reason I'm popping it up is because he's got Stewie on there. I mean, my most of the time they just pick on me. They don't pick on anyone else. All right. So, Brad, over under 8-game win for the Bears.
I'm gonna say under. I think they'll be just under. I'm gonna say I think they probably win like 7 games.
Dan, I'm gonna say
it's a
this
step
right now.
in the right. It's a step in the right direction.
Dan, I would not be surprised if they go into Lambeau and they beat the Packers, and here's why. The Packers are so dysfunctional with Aaron Rodgers now and not that buffer, Devontae Adams. So when they start playing bad, he doesn't have Devontae Adams to bail him out. I would not be shocked if the Bears go in and win that game.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one. It's always tough playing the Packers. I hope we can go in there and get a W. I think they're ripe for the picking right now. They're at a situation where they're reeling a little bit, right? So you can catch them off guard. You can kind of catch them before they kind of get their footing, you might say. If they're able to get it, I don't know. It remains to be seen because we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers do something without like a Devontae Adams in so long, right? So we know what Brett Favre was capable of doing. He made guys around him just so much better. He created guys out of nothing, right? And so that I love Jersey Girl. Thank you, Jersey Girl. I appreciate that. I like it. I love those thoughts. Those types of thoughts for me are really good. They're funny. There we go. Exactly. But you're killing me, Monte.
I have Packer gear all over here, but I got to be honest, man. I went off on a rant earlier. I'm so sick of this guy.
He does look like that. He does look like Nicolas Cage in that movie.
He does.
There's another guy that he looks like. Have you ever seen Cape Fear?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen
De
Cape
Niro?
Fear? Yeah, he looks like him too. Just go pull it up. Compare the two. He looks like him too in a little bit. So it's
So
funny.
Dan,
But yeah, I think we can get
over
it.
under 8 games.
Over under, I'm gonna go. That's a tough one, man. I've been saying 7-10 all year. To be honest with you, I think they're right around 8-9, maybe 7-10. It is a rebuilding situation, and while we are flying high right now and we feel good about ourselves, there are going to be hiccups along the way. There are going to be problems. There are going to be things that we have to work on. So I'm prepared for those things. We're riding, and if they, you never know how this thing in the NFL works though, because in 10 years, 10 teams have gone from worst to first in their division. We weren't worse last year. The Lions were, of course, but we know that it is possible. So you never know what can happen. I'm gonna go 8-9 that the Bears end up being this year.
Okay,
I will say,
go ahead.
if they, if they're in it, I think that Justin Fields can pull them to a couple extra wins. So, like,
Absolutely.
although I say like 7 and he's saying 8, like, there are certainly, if they're in some games that maybe they didn't think they'd be in, he makes some big plays like yesterday. He could pull them to 9-10 wins and they could sneak in.
Yeah. And it goes so well. I mean, if you beat a team like San Francisco, and that plays in the locker room, like you said earlier, Tevin Jenkins even said it. What Eberflus has been preaching is starting to happen, and the team sees it happening. I see it happening. Tevin Jenkins was one of the guys that didn't initially buy in, and I'm just going to be honest about it. But now he's at the point where he's like, yeah, this guy knows his stuff. He knows what he's doing. So it
always good.
Works wonders, man.
It's always good to see results. Okay, let's see. Here's the Cape Fear picture. Here's Aaron Rodgers. All right.
It's close,
Cape
man. It's
Fear
close.
De Niro, Aaron Rodgers. All right. Good call, Dan. Good call.
It's close.
All right, I'm talking with Daniel Goodwin and Brad Ward here on the Full Monty Sports Show. Make sure to give us a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Guys, we got about 8 minutes left. We're going a little bit over because obviously I had technical difficulties. And Dan, you weren't on, but Brad was basically talking to himself and the chat room for 20 minutes.
Oh,
the
wow.
sweat was pouring down. I was nowhere to be found.
That's funny.
Let's go over real quick right now before we get to the Monday night game and then the Thursday night game. My top 5 right now, not in order. I have the Eagles. Okay. I have the Bills. I have the Chargers. I have the Chiefs. And my 5th pick would probably be Tampa. Are the Chiefs the best team in the league, Dan?
Man, what they were able to do yesterday against that Arizona Clint team, I mean, they just look like a well-oiled machine. They haven't skipped a beat, it seems like, right? You got guys that just stepped in. They filled the void. It's like they didn't miss Tyreek Hill at all, So when you have that type of situation, and it's like I said, that well-oiled machine, until somebody really puts them out of their misery, or not puts them out of their misery, but takes them down or knocks them down a couple notches, you got to put them up there. So I would say they're probably up there. I don't know if they're number 1. I would put Buffalo up there at number 1 right now.
Brad, who's your number 1 team?
Buffalo.
Okay.
I think Buffalo has offense and defense best team in the NFL right now. At least, what we saw week 1, what we had expectations coming in, they kind of lived up to the expectations, put a whooping on the world champs. So I would put them at 1 right now. They were playing with them on the other night. So, toying with them. I mean, it was pretty impressive effort. And, I like what Buffalo's made of, their defense, I think is more proven than although there was some nice high points for the Chiefs defense yesterday, I still think Buffalo, but it's early, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Overreaction week 1, right? Everybody overreacts, but it will be. There will be other teams that emerge as contenders. I think that certainly the Chargers can be a contender if they get it together, a little bit better. I felt like they should have won that game by more yesterday than they did. And let them kind of hang around the Raiders, that is, right? But yeah, I like the Chargers a lot, Monty. I know you like the Chargers a lot.
I just don't like their head coach, but other than that, you're 100% right. They should have blown out the Raiders. They had 5 sacks. They had a couple of interceptions. Devontae Adams played great, by the way.
Listen,
so good.
The thing about the Chargers yesterday, I will just say this real quick on them. They lost a lot of close games in the past few years,
and they won
right?
that one.
And they won that one, and a lot of it had to do with the acquisition of Khalil Mack closing
and
that
their
game
defense,
out.
100%.
Yep.
Brad hitting it out of the park today. All right, Dan. My friend Steve says, how can you be so nice to Dan? And you got to do it. Dan, I do a lot of TikTok videos. I'm at over 1.5 million views. You guys know I send them to the chat room. You're probably wanting to mute me. I got over 25,000 views in a day calling out the horrific loss by Notre Dame to Marshall. I don't give a rat's ass who you are. You cannot be a top 10 ranked team and lose to Marshall at home, and now your starting quarterback is out with an injury. Dan, this is a disaster. Why?
Yeah, it's a major disaster. Man, you could sit here and say, hey, you're dealt a bad hand and things like that, but at the end of the day, you came out of the gates and you had Ohio State. Nobody could fault you for losing that game. You played them tough in the horseshoe, and you get credit for that. But to come home and play a team like Marshall and kind of lay down the way that they did, I just thought they were going to start clicking at some point. Okay, things are going to work. Things are going to work, and it just never happened through the whole game. And you gotta figure out a way to right that wrong. I mean, I have no words. I have no excuses for it. It's a bad loss, man. It's a very bad loss. As an 8 seed team, that's terrible. You can't do that.
So, Dan, is your head coach under fire?
I don't know. I don't want him to be under fire. There's a lot of people that want him to be under fire, but you take over a program and you took it over with the bowl game on the slate, right? And you're in the middle of that situation. So can you blame him for losing that bowl game? When all those things were going on, a whole, debacle of Brian Kelly leaving and then a interview process while trying to get ready for a bowl game, not knowing who the coach was going to be, which direction you're going to go, how many assistant coaches are going to stay or leave, recruits. So he had his hands full in that regard. And in my opinion, if anybody wants to put him under the fire for that, I think that's egregious. And someone in good conscience couldn't do that. Now, going forward, how does this season play out? Can you right the wrong? Can you get the ship turned around, and get guys playing? And I don't care if you have a backup quarterback that's going in there. This isn't, pros, right, where the talent drop-off is that significant. If you have backup quarterback and you have guys that are, underneath the other guys in college, they should be ready to play sooner rather than later. So, we'll see what happens going forward. I think he'll be able to write it. I believe in Marcus Freeman and what he's doing. The players believe in him.
Players love him.
The coaches believe in him. So, at the end of the day, this is just a situation that happened, a bad loss. But the good thing is that there are other bad losses, Texas A&M.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been terrible. Yeah, Appalachian State, Alabama almost lost. All right, Brad, we're going to give you a little chance to brag here. I think the Sixers are going to win 60 games. They are really good. James Harden's in shape. I mean, give credit to Joel Embiid. He's the only guy to get James Harden in shape. I think my Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are going to be phenomenal. But let me just tell you, for a young nucleus now to get Donovan Mitchell, Brad, you got to be talking about the Cavs like they were when LeBron first got there, because they are young and they are talented. And before you talk too much trash, let me just remind you, Atlanta knocked them out of the playoffs last year.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Totally different ballgame. Now, yeah, they were talking a lot about this, right? And it was very similar to like another situation in town that happened a while back where they were like, oh, the Cavs are out of the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. And then like the next day they signed him, right? Like, or they traded for him. They gave up a lot, but the big thing is they didn't have to give up one of their big three, right? So they keep Garland. They keep their two bigs, so they keep the big three together and add Donovan Mitchell, and it's an incredible move by Kobe Altman, in my opinion. They are a wing away, I think, from being a contender. I
was going to say that.
Even if it's like a veteran 3-and-D guy, and they still have a Okoro, who's a good lockdown defender and a great asset to have because he takes away that responsibility of guarding the other team's best player from your scorers. But he can't shoot. Like, he's just not a good enough shooter to be a relied upon 3-and-D. And when you have an undersized backcourt
Yeah.
like Garland, like Mitchell, where your Mitchell's an undersized 2 and Garland's an undersized 1, you're gonna need perimeter shooting with them driving to the hole. So it'll be interesting. They still have some money to work with under the luxury tax, maybe a trade deadline move, but the core is there. Like, if you look at, it's interesting in Cleveland, youngest team in the NFL, Cleveland Browns, youngest team in baseball, Cleveland Indians in first place, pardon me, Guardians, and youngest team in NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and just added Donovan Mitchell to that group. So
You know what, Brad?
all the youngest teams. So it's very interesting.
I mean, is this totally a crazy thought? But why not go after Cam Reddish? The guy's 6'5", right? He's a bigger body. Why not go after him? Because you are undersized in the backcourt.
Yeah, you are. I wonder what they're going to do at the 3 position. Like, so they still have like Karis LeVert, right? Like, so do you want to start LeVert at the 3? They have some depth there. That's kind of a stretch to start him at the 3, right? Even though he's a little bit bigger. I think he's like 6'5" or 6'4". That may be giving him an inch or two. But, and then they have Rubio back, who was having a career year last year before he got hurt. So they should be okay. Kevin Love in the last year of his deal finally, but he's kind of turned it around too. Got himself back in shape. Had a good year last year. So they're going to need that shooting though. One more, they're a piece away on the wing, I think, Monte. But
I think
they should be very competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. And if you're in Cleveland, like you said, the Guardians, the Browns, the Cavs, very good. Dan, one more question, then we'll get our prediction and get you guys out of here. So Ball is not going to be ready for the start of the season for the Chicago Bulls. Very disappointed second half of the year, kind of faltered, didn't make a good showing in the postseason. What went wrong, and what do they need to do to improve?
Oh, man. You just ran out of gas in this situation with Chicago. They were riding and they were doing well, and just too many pieces went down right around that Christmas time. You had Zach LaVine, who had a knee injury. He battled through that as much as he could, but he was limited in what he could do. Right, he had to have injections done, and he ended up having surgery on his knee. Nothing major, but it was enough to hinder what he was trying to do on the court. And it just fell onto one guy's shoulders, and he couldn't carry the complete load with some of our key pieces missing. Defensively and we were small. We were very small.
Yeah.
So they've addressed the size issue with Andre Drummond. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic works. Are they going to play Drummond and Vucevic together sometimes? Because I think they could. Because Vucevic, he can step out, he can play a stretch, he won't be in the way, and Drummond can hit the boards. But it's just going to be, do you want to go that route? Do you want to play big sometime? I want to see them play that way. I like Pat Williams. I love him. I think he's a really good talent, but there's a lack of aggression from him. So they're going to need him to play with some more aggression. When you're undersized at power forward, you have to play with aggression. You have to play with fortitude. Otherwise, you won't be able to, it shows. Your lack of size will show. So I think those are the main issues for Chicago. If they could get a piece, whether it be a big, a 4, a stretch 4, something like that, to kind of pair if you want to bring Drummond off the bench or whatever. But they're going to have some size because we were just too little. There were times last year where we had 4 guards on the floor, and all of them were 6'4" or below.
Right, and if you have guards, you got to have guards who can go out and rebound. I don't care if you're undersized. There are guards like DeJounte Murray, who's big, but there are guards who go out and get 5, 6, 7 rebounds a game. Steph Curry in the playoffs is getting 5, 6 rebounds. And props for using the term fortitude, Dan, on this show. I like it. All right, let's get to tonight's games. I'm going to go first. I think that the NFL did a terrible job in picking this game. No one in the offseason thought that Seattle was going to be even remotely competitive. Geno Smith is a former Jet. He couldn't start with the New York Jets. They have one of the worst offensive line. I think that Denver wins like 31-10. And then Thursday night, although I like the Chargers, they're without their stud wide receiver. He's not going to play, Keenan Allen, because of a hamstring. So I'm taking the Chiefs. Those are my 2 picks. I think the Chiefs win 30-23. Brad, let's start with you tonight and Thursday.
Denver tonight, big, and then but where is the game Thursday?
Kansas City.
It's in. I'll take Kansas City on Thursday without Allen. Too as well. I agree, and I do want to say that this is the best chat in YouTube ever. Love this chat. Applause to the chat.
They really do a great job.
Fantastic.
I'm so
Cracking me up.
I'm so
Cracking me up
thankful.
today.
All right, Dan, who do you got Monday and Thursday?
I think tonight is going to be Denver. It's going to be a showcase of Russell Wilson and his exploits. He's got a ton of weapons in Denver. He should be able to utilize them frequently and often. And at the end of the day, somebody take a shot. They'll win this game. And then, of course, I'm going to take Kansas City in that game. Arrowhead Thursday night, the crowd's going to be raucous. They're going to be live. It's Kansas City. Kansas City all day.
I have Justin Herbert winning the MVP. Last question. Dan, who do you have winning the MVP?
Believe it or not, Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen he's got everything there for him to win it. I think Justin Herbert is a good choice. He's definitely a good choice. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did win it. But I think Josh Allen, he brings the element of running that's going to ultimately put him over the top as opposed to Herbert. Herbert can run. He can scoot now.
But Dan, I agree with what you're saying. But Josh Allen has got to realize, like Carson Wentz never realized, and I brought this up yesterday, when he's running, he's not in Wyoming, barreling over guys who are going to be used car salesmen. He's going against NFL players, and he's trying to truck these guys. And I worry about Josh Allen. He never slides. He keeps he wants to give punishment when he's running.
His health will be a problem in the long run, not immediately. I don't think he gets hurt immediately because the dude's so big. He's like 6'5".
He's big.
250, man. He's a huge kid, right? But in the long run, all of those hits, it's like Cam Newton. Cam Newton was huge and big, right? And in the short run, I mean, he was running people over. They used him as a battering ram up the middle sometimes, calling draws, right? So or quarterback dives, you might say, right? Yeah. So in the long run, it just built up, and your body cannot withstand the blows from those other guys for that.
All right, Brad. Before we get to your answer, Dan, how can we follow you? How can we support you? I am so happy for you that your podcast is growing. I see your following growing. I go into your speaker chat sometimes on Twitter when I see it because I keep telling you to put it on my page. You never do. And this is a one-sided relationship, Dan. There's street signs named after you one way. I keep asking you to do stuff, and you never do. How can
one day I'm literally gonna do it. I really am. But follow me at Dan Goodwin III on Twitter. We also have the Three Kings of the Midway, 3Kings_Midway. That's a podcast that we do. And, of course, the Big and Bright Show, that's another podcast that I do. It engulfs all sports. And, of course, we do Spaces, right? We do that Spaces. And we're going to be doing this type of stuff not daily, but every single game day for that. We had about 500 people in there yesterday. It was amazing. So I shout out to all of those followers and everybody that listens to our podcast. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me, Monte. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I really want to get you to come by and talk with the Three Kings as well at some point.
Love to do that, and to show you what a nice guy I am, I'm not going to talk about how my Mets are going to sweep the Cubs this week because the Mets are starting to play better, and the Cubs have basically packed it in.
Hey, shout out to the Mets. And I've been on Twitter saying it's the best entrance that I've seen in so long. I love it. I'll turn to a Mets game when I think that entrance is about to happen. I'll actually turn to it and watch it because it's awesome.
Brad is miserable with that entrance. All right, Dan, we'll definitely have you on down the road to talk Bulls and to talk more Bears. Appreciate it. And I hope the Bears keep winning because you know this. It's so much better when your team is good and competitive to cover them.
Absolutely. Just be competitive. Just be there at the end of the day. Hey, Brad, thank you very much. One of the best guys when it comes to anything Cleveland, man. You're on top of everything. I see it from you before I see it from Schefter.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Dan.
Thanks, Dan, so much. Really appreciate it. All right,
Good job,
Brad.
man.
Dan's great. He's just great. All right, Brad, who's your MVP? Are you going with Josh Allen?
I am going with Josh Allen, unfortunately. Listen. pure pocket passer, Herbert is the best in the game. Like, give him a clean pocket. He's incredible, right? He is the most accurate, I think there is. But, when you're talking about, like, throwing on the move, it's probably Mahomes. You're talking total package. Right now, I got to go Josh Allen. Like, he is. And it scares me, too. Like him taking all those hits when they're up big in the first game of the season. Like, I'm like, what are they doing, right? Like, don't stop having him run, right? Like, try to. It's your quarterback, but he like wants the contact. He's such a big guy and physical guy that he wants the contact. But they will have to try to like pick their spots. I know it's a huge part of their game is his ability to run, but he needs to slide, maybe, maybe learn how to slide and maybe, use that. If you can win without doing that, then do it and save it for the playoffs, right? Because then that's such another weapon or another level you can go to when you get to the playoffs. I think the Bills are good enough to pretty much cruise to a playoff spot this year. I think they're for real. So
okay, I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say it in week 1. The Bills are not going to the Super Bowl. Telling you right now, I do not buy into this team. They have no running game whatsoever, and that's
they don't need one. Well,
we'll see.
First of all, they kind of do with Allen, right?
Right.
And they have 3 good backs. I mean, they have 3 pretty good backs. I mean, when Cook fumbled the first time he touched it, and got in the doghouse. But I mean, they have been able, when they needed to run in the playoffs last year, they did, right?
I am not buying the Buffalo Bills. I'm sorry. I think they'll get to the AFC Championship again.
And who beats them?
I think the Chiefs are better, and I think the Chargers are better.
Maybe the Chiefs, maybe the Chargers. You're right. Okay. 3 very good teams, but right now I would have to lean towards the Bills. I think they're the most complete of the 3 teams.
By the way, Brad, if I was going to give up my show for 20 minutes, there's no one I would rather give it up to.
Oh, my gosh.
So thank you for really, and I'm sorry that happened. Like I said, I've done maybe 200 podcasts. I've done maybe 200 shows. That's never happened before, ever. People always ask me why I do the show live, and part of the reason why is the interaction with the chat room. It's a lot different if you're not live. Like I love the chat room, and I love live guests. You did an amazing job. Brad, you are becoming very successful. You are working hard. I see it all the time. I appreciate your work ethic. How can we follow you and support you?
At Word on Sports on Twitter, go to alleyesOnCleveland.com, and then I write for USA Today Sports Media Groups, the Browns Wire. Go Browns, baby, 1-0.
Yes, and next week we will have the threesome back with Amarie.
Yep, Amarie at Part-Time Bro. She'll be back, all 3 of us. 6 o'clock Mondays. Who said it? Jersey Girl said she needs an Uber home tonight. That means we did a good show. Right?
That is true. And normally the show will just go to 7, but I was off air for about 15 minutes, so we had to make it up. Brad, enjoy the games. We'll see you next week.
All right, Monty, thank you. You're the man, brother.
Thanks so much. All right, I want to thank Brad so much for really holding it down while we had technical difficulties. I want to thank everyone in the chat. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. Tell one person about this show. Go to YouTube, copy it, and say, hey, watch this show. The more views we get, the more likes we get, the more subscribers we get, the more we can do this. And in the immortal words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back.
They were worried about cold butts. That's to bring the heated.
Oh, look at that reaction. Look at that.